Hello, and welcome to the Games of Divinity, a Northern Chronicle. A Northern Chronicle is an Exalted 3rd edition game set in the northern direction of creation. Join us as we follow the adventures of the monster hunters Atlas, played by Lauren, and Ursa, played by John, with Becca as our storyteller.
Well, let's start off talking about how Ursa got started. Do you want to start with his childhood, or do you want to move on straight to...
We're not going to the childhood, we're going to just before Exalting. So, he was originally a hunter, mostly living as a hermit, surviving off of the land. And his exalt happened during a period of great physical stress when he encountered a much larger than usual bear while on a hunting trip. He was victorious, but wounded and horribly scarred, which is why he retains those after the Exalting, because it happened while he was still immortal. And basically, what we have decided on was that he ended up stumbling away from the scene of the battle, ending up falling down a ravine or a chasm, and finding a crypt of a Lunar Exalted, where he found the suit of armor he currently wears, stylized in the form of a bear, with Smash Fists as the gauntlet component. Since that point, he has mainly wandered as more of a mercenary brawler, because the fight awoke something in him that basically made him crave greater challenges.
So, starting off, Atlas doesn't remember who his parents are, if he has any brothers or sisters. He doesn't remember any of that. His earliest memories are of being of some commotion of some sort, of being captured, of being enslaved. He was brought to a camp where the slavers who took him were effectively breaking their slaves before they could sell them off, trying to break their resolve, their emotions, what have you. And they tried to break Atlas, and Atlas endured. So they got bored/tired of trying to break him and decided that somebody with that much spirit would make a much better gladiator. So they sold him as a gladiator slave versus as a gladiator, or versus a manual labor type slave. This resulted in Atlas learning to fight, and from a very young age being put in the arena and doing well enough at least to survive. He has always had a insatiable thirst for knowledge, and so it was, instead of the lavish rewards that other gladiators would ask for when winning, he would ask for books. And he would read the book, and then he would discard the book because he'd be done with the book. Once you've read it, you don't need to read it twice, right? So, this leads to a situation where he starts having longer and longer win streaks. He becomes renowned with his skill with a blade, to the point where one day he does something, and we can leave it ill-defined at the moment, but he does something to annoy/upset his master, who in turn ends up taking away all his books, not that he needs them anymore, but schedules a fight with a traveling outcast, dragon-blooded. This is assumed that this will not only kill Atlas, so he won't be a problem anymore, but it will also allow for the tremendous commercial value. And he's able to cash in at the same time, so win-win for him. The dragon-blooded toys with Atlas for quite a while, who is absolutely outmatched in every single way. So after a fairly grueling fight, Atlas is laying on the ground, and the dragon-blooded is standing over him, and he asks the crowd, should I kill him, should I not? And in the past, every single time Atlas has been spared. It's one of the reasons why he's still alive after so many battles, so many gladiatorial fights. And the dragon-blooded asks the crowd, should I kill him? And the crowd's like, yes, kill him, finish him. In part because of a little bit of prompting from the master, but also because he was beaten so badly nobody expected him to come back, as it were. So the dragon-blooded draws back his sword and strikes true, right on the neck. However, at the moment of exaltation, Atlas has a vision of the unconquered sun. There's a mandate that's given to him: restore my world, free my people, lead. The exact nature, we can try to spell that out another time. But it's a story for another time. But the sword snaps as it hits Atlas's neck, shattering in two. The dragon blood reels back as sunlight bathes the arena and everybody starts freaking out and fleeing. Atlas picks up the shard in his bloody hands and stabs it into the dragon blooded's neck, felling him instantly. Looking around, realizing he needs to get the hell out, not quite understanding exactly what's going on, but having more clarity than most Exalts would after exalting due to the vision, he flees. He flees into the Arctic environment that is the North. He's from the North. He speaks the Sky tongue. While learning to read, he learned Old Realm, self-taught. And while he's traveling in the North, in a particularly long, snowy winter, he came across a corpse with an arm out, extending. Basically, the entire body has been completely encased in ice and is underneath. All that's sticking out is a snow-covered arm, and in that arm is a beautifully wrought moonsilver blade with a gray hearthstone set in its pommel. And Atlas takes one look at it, reaches out to it, not quite understanding what's going on, and it felt like there was some kind of connection to this blade, so he reached out and picked it up. A strangeness came over him. It was almost like there was a connection, but it was almost too much, so he throws away the blade and starts walking away, and the blade started to follow him.
In the background, when Atlas grabbed the sword, there was a bird calling in the background.
Oh, was there?
Yep.
Okay. Fair enough. So Atlas has been traveling since then, and at some point, we're going to say 6 months to a year later, Atlas and Ursa first encountered themselves in a tavern.
Yes, indeed. So in this tavern, I'm trying to remember all the details that we discussed.
It was in a small rural community, I think. It was just a chance meeting, and there was lots and lots of drinking involved.
Yes.
I believe Ursa was getting particularly rambunctious, and it was asked of anyone around to take him out, and that just happened to be...
Or at least make him leave.
Make him leave,
That was the wording.
Many tried and failed. And really, the only capable person left standing was Atlas.
Atlas having his nose in a book, having 15 shots of vodka, basically, because he's got a hell of a tolerance to alcohol. But my stamina plus resistance is as high as Ursa's.
Fair enough. That's legit.
Fine, we can make it 10. 1 per point.
No, it's totally fine.
Not even really that buzzed.
You had had several drinks that night, same as Ursa.
Mm-hmm.
And I politely asked Ursa to remove himself, as this is not his establishment, and it feels appropriate that he should probably move on and find himself a snowbank to sleep in.
At which point Ursa would have said politely declined, but he would have actually refused to acknowledge your character at all. If the only effort to get him to leave was a verbal one, he would just sit there at the bar and continue drinking.
The next time a shot was poured to him, I would take the shot, throw it back, and toss the cup over my shoulder.
Then the fight would start.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Ursa says something to the tune of, "You shouldn't have done that." And
No, he doesn't talk.
Oh,
you just see a mailed fist coming your way.
Atlas takes it on the chin. And Ursa goes, "Wait, that usually works."
Then he gets excited instead of actually fighting.
The two of us end up
scrapping.
You guys punching, and I don't know if you're actually pulling out your sword for...
If he's hitting me with a mailed fist, it's on.
Okay. You guys are launching each other through basically this
the walls,
small, long house.
Made of wood.
Splinters
shatter everywhere.
As
Everybody
I would imagine
flees.
you're the first person thrown through the wall.
I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And I pick myself up. You got another?
The snow is definitely drifting on this evening. It's fairly blustery. But as you're outside the building and he's starting to focus on you, people are just leaving that establishment.
We both start glowing as time goes on, as we basically keep upping the ante.
Yep. Essentially fighting to a standstill.
The dark night, broken by the extreme brightness of the two animas, the two stars colliding.
Oh, everyone has started evacuating the village as certain buildings have now caught fire.
Let's see, what's your animal?
Mine is a flaming lion, or a pair of flaming lions that basically encircle and pounce on my enemies as I'm hammering them with blows.
Okay.
On a fun note, the sword, at a certain point, my anima quells, and my sword just takes a life of its own, starts trying to flank you as I fence you from the front.
So for a brief time, when we're both at bonfire, you'd see like 2 lions and a bear fighting from like a couple of miles off.
As we're both totemic, huge giant monsters engaging in a Godzilla battle.
Oh gosh, I love it.
The unstoppable force versus the immovable object that ultimately ends in nothing.
I imagine as this is all building up, you guys kind of far away, your animal's blaring, and you just run towards each other, getting ready for that final blow. And you guys make contact, everything just goes white, and once your guys' vision clears, you're both just sitting on the ground.
Laying in the snow.
Just exhausted. We've spent the last of what we had.
The snow gently falling on our faces.
People screaming in the background as they're still attempting to run away from the anathema.
Yeah. And then at that point, like after a few heartbeats, Ursa would start laughing.
As would Atlas. You know? you can give a hit. I'll give you that one.
That is the most fun I've had in ages.
We should probably get the fuck out, though.
Not a bad idea. Let's go find another bar.
Yeah, the alcohol in this place, I think, caught fire somewhere between the 4th and 5th hour of our brawl.
I lost track.
Oh, fantastic. And thus began the friendship of Ursa and Atlas in the north.
In the north.
Yes.
So since this time, it's probably been about 2 years since you guys have exalted at this point. Took about 6 months to a year for you guys to meet. And then since then, you have known each other for the last year, traveling around the north, primarily staying in, south-north.
The southern portion of the north.
It is the very tail end of winter and very beginning of spring when we pan in. You have been riding your agatas.
So I have summoned one.
At least. I mean,
Sure.
You guys have been together for a year.
Okay. Then we would each have our own.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've declared that you guys would have your own. It makes sense.
I have summoned a beautiful demon wasp out of thin air. It's a spirit wasp, which is technically true, for you to ride on.
I shall call him Buzz.
They're intelligent, right?
They are.
It attempts numerous times to shake you off.
That's fine. Ursa views it as it being playful.
One of these days. One of these days.
Yeah, it has to obey me. It doesn't have to like him.
You guys have been traveling in the low, foggy rain that has been established. It's starting to become close to dinner time as you're making your way to a not a small town, a village called Barosvik.
Okay.
You have been through here a couple of times throughout your travels, just because occasionally they have good monsters to hunt. It takes place, you know where this is, it's in the Meadow Valley, which happens to be in the eastern portion of the north. Barosvik is the largest village in this farmland. This area does have small forests, but largely it's open plains for farming when the very, very short growing season is.
Short growing season, but some farmland. Okay.
Quite a bit of farmland. That's mostly what this region is.
Okay.
You guys are flying in this misty fog as it's raining. You've been riding your agatas for a couple hours. You guys you start to descend and you see the village and fires, smoke rising from chimneys.
I shout to you over the rushing wind. I can't wait for some good hot stew and a nice cup of mead.
I just need a beer, Atlas.
I think Ball Slam waters down his beer. That's why you're better off getting something else.
Ursa doesn't respond, quietly contemplating whether or not the beer was watered down and whether or not a man deserves to die for such an offense.
You guys get an excellent whiff of one of the chimneys, and you catch the faint scent of meat being cooked over the fire.
I think it'd be a good idea for us to land outside the village and dismiss our mounts there.
The last time we landed in the middle of the village, it did cause a stir, yes.
Walk in from the outside, just like the normal, everyday travelers that we are.
Except one of them is 8 feet tall, Atlas.
Wearing articulated moonsilver armor, yeah, that's not going to stand out.
We don't blend in, that's not what we do.
I blend in just fine, as long as I sufficiently cover Flying Silver Dream. I'm good. I'm good.
You guys are able to find a patch of forest that's fairly nearby to the village and discreetly land within there, making probably about a half an hour trip to the actual city, the outer part of the village.
To the wasps, please dematerialize. We'll call you when we need you. Follow on the other side.
They flutter their wings to shake off the residue of the rain and then just
disappear into nothing.
Almost evaporating into...
All right. So we will watch trudge through the snow? No, you said growing season is farmland.
Yeah, it's mostly... There are patches of snow, but it's going to be much more on the mountain range that you can see in the distance. Mm-hmm. Here has been just... It's been flooding.
Yeah. This is spring, you said?
It's very early spring, end of winter.
Okay.
So we're probably dealing with mud.
More mud than anything else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we trudge through. We talked about what Ursa's wearing. He basically is big, giant bear armor articulated to have bear stuff and a bear skin cloak on top of that.
Yes. Ursa's armor is stylized to be, like a bear. So the metal itself looks almost like it's fur, even though it is just moon silver. The helmet itself is essentially a half helmet from the nose up that also covers the back of the head and connects into the breastplate that is stylized to look like a bear snout and a bear head. He has smash fists, they look like bear's paws, but with fingers and blunted claws at the end of them. So they still only do bashing, but like that matters with Ursa. And he does have a bearskin cloak that he wears around his shoulders.
Walking at his side is the much, much smaller man that is Atlas.
Standing at roughly how tall?
6 foot.
Okay. So, by normal standards,
reasonably
he's still pretty tall.
But by Ursa's standards, much, much shorter by comparison.
Yes.
Yeah. Ursa's like 4.5, 5 feet wide and like 8 feet tall. He is massive.
Quite literally a bear of a man.
He has the giant merit.
Yeah, my defining tie to you is likes bear man.
Fair enough.
I'm wearing comparably light clothing. We got the pants, which are, I guess, standard breeches. Breeches, yeah. And then a fairly light tunic. I've got scars throughout my body from various different fights across my back, arms, and what have you. I am not very pretty at all, although by pretty standards, I believe you are hideous, so...
Yeah, I have an appearance of 2, but the horrid merit, so that's basically... I look so powerfully ugly, I get 2 bonus dice to my intimidate.
Yep.
What it boils down to.
I am not attractive at all, but there's a huge smile across my face most of the time. Wildly charismatic. People just like ya. There's an intensity and an intelligence in the eyes as I walk, and the mud, I am wearing boots, and the mud splatters upon them as we walk through the various puddles. The rain dripping down and soaking us to our core.
You guys make your way. Most of the housing here is what you would gather to be single units. They're log houses laid in that traditional log up to like about halfway up, and then it's more wood planks around the top with various windows. And you can see most of them, as it's starting to get to be dusk now, have lights glowing from within. There doesn't seem to be any fortification around the town, just open with patches of woods, but open plains other than that. It is a little bit hilly, so you can see certain buildings fairly well, but that's mostly the style. It's wood log cabins. There are a few longhouses here that actually look like they would house several people, more than that traditional Viking-esque. So it's still kind of that log cabin on the bottom, and very steeped roofs to help slough off the snow. But it's got those large beams going across it, and each side has a decorative, we'll actually see bears' maws on either side. You guys have been to this town before. You know that there's probably about 1,000 to 2,000 people in this village. It's easily the largest in this region if you're not going to one of the cities.
Okay.
And there is one particular longhouse that stands out, as most longhouses tend to be open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be like your market meeting places, your inns, your shops. It's almost like they come there to congregate so that they're not having to stand outside in the snow and rain all the time. But there's one longhouse kind of that's sitting atop this hill overlooking the rest of the village. And you know that to be the leader of this village. We call him the Carl for now.
The Carl. Okay. And I look for the longhouse that has the sign with the mug of ale hanging down from it.
Mm-hmm. That is exactly where you guys are heading. You have been here before. So you asked, why are you guys here now? For lack of a better term, have kind of hunted out in the region that you were spending time in. You've been through here before, know that there's occasionally monsters that come up. Kind of just, you're passing through at the same time. So, might as well stop,
absolutely.
Rest, and see if there's any good fighting around.
I just wasn't sure if we were passing through to somewhere else, or if this was the destination to itself. Also, I will think about the area. So the nation was once a very proud, very prosperous civilization, but within the last couple of years, or couple decades, I think is more accurate, the realm has invaded, smashed their legions, and conscripted their people into janissaries. I think that's actually in the core book. Their people are soldiers who get tithed to the realm.
That was specifically crashed. Well, I guess this was a subset.
That is part of the nation. The Immaculate Order does occupy, have shrines set up throughout the land, and Immaculate monks, mostly human, do tend to the shrines and ensure compliance with the gods, because if the gods want prayer, and the humans pray to them, and the gods in turn protect them.
As you walked through Barosvik,
mm-hmm.
you would notice that one of the longhouses is set up as a kind of temple for the local gods who take care of this particular, mostly gods who look over the farming, because that is their life here.
Fertility and,
mm-hmm. Fire.
Yep. Many, as was stated, there aren't many Shadowlands, but what is less known is that further in the mountains, basically to the northwest of us, there is a not insignificant, it's relatively small, but there is in fact a Shadowland that people's ancestors, people will take a pilgrimage to from time to time. And this is not sanctioned by the Immaculate Order at all, but peasants will occasionally go there in order to commune with their ancestor spirits. So there is an element of ancestor worship that does exist, but is very much kept on the hush-hush.
You guys finally make it.
We trudge into town through the muck, the mire, rain streaming down our faces as we head vigorously towards the tavern.
Ursa, taking point, loudly just opens the door and slams it open, and everyone just kind of stops what they're doing, turns and looks, as we see our two young Solar Exalts, not that they know that.
Or two humans.
Two humans, quote unquote.
I was going to say, and Ursa's not really that young. He exalted late in life.
Oh, that's fair.
He's like in his late 40s, early 50s.
Oh, okay, that's good to know too.
So, an older, giant gentleman in... Mm-hmm. You, by the way, honestly, we both are a little obvious in the sense that you are literally wearing articulated plate.
Yeah.
Like, this is not something peasants will probably ever see outside of a dragon-blooded. Yeah. One of the gods amongst the people.
You guys stomp in the water just rushing down from what you've been wearing, dripping. What was previously a loud and boisterous sounding room has gone completely quiet as everyone nervously looks to you. This longhouse has kind of a front area that's more set up as the tavern with a back area for resting. You guys have resting.
Like an inn.
Yeah, basically it's your tavern inn.
A warm fire crackles in the hearth.
It is smoky and stuffy here. So it takes a moment for you to get used to the smell as you had just come out from a wet but clean and crisp smelling.
It was fresh.
Yeah, fresh area. The innkeeper is actually a fairly large woman who seems to recognize you and starts to pull out drinks.
I smile. I note the empty table near the hearth, and I make a beeline for it.
Corner table again, fine.
I flash everybody in the tavern a big smile.
There are several tables where men have gathered around to play different sorts of games, from dice to a version of chess, as well as cards. But there's one or two groups that stand out in particular, because while the other tables seem to be the regular farmers, they're wearing pretty simple garb. These men seem to have weapons at their sides. They're definitely sheathed, and seem to be wearing more armor, even though they're resting for the night.
I scrutinize them, like out of the corner of my eye kind of thing, but I'm kind of trying to get an idea of who they are, who they're affiliated with. Are they wearing uniforms? Are these brigands/mercenaries? Okay. Like, what am I able to tell?
Are you wanting to be discreet
Yes.
while you're looking and doing this?
Well, discreet in the... I'm making an effort not to stare, but I'm not looking at them.
These men are very clearly mercenaries of some kind. That's obvious by their attire, as well as how they kind of stance. Their stance. They're a little bit more poised, even though they're drinking and have kind of gone back to resuming the level of the room activity after you guys go sit down and the barb maiden has started to serve you, has started to slowly creep back up, so they're getting kind of just used to your guys' presence again, since you're not creating a fuss.
We're not killing anybody, we're done. Yeah.
They don't seem to have any specific insignia on them to declare that they're with a particular house, if that's what you're asking.
They're clearly not realm legionaries, because if they were, they would have insignias all over the goddamn place.
So your best guess is, well, it's kind of odd for this time of year to be seeing what seem so many of them. Mm-hmm. It seems that these are likely guild-employed mercenaries who are likely traveling with a caravan through this area, and they've stopped for the night here.
I make sure to take the chair the closest to the hearth so my back has the best opportunity to dry. And I'm just looking out across the table. When the barmaid brings us booze, I would also like to request the stew, because that sounds delicious.
Ursa will have pushed the chair to the side, just setting it on the other side of the table, and actually sat down on the floor.
It's kind of you not to break their chairs.
He knows the limits of the furniture around here.
It's all cheap IKEA knockoff.
And the table with you sitting probably comes just about like the bottom of your rib cage.
Yeah. So they'll be sitting there on the ground, and hopefully the innkeep remembers him well enough to bring him a pitcher of something as opposed to a cup, because that's not going to last long.
She would have brought over 2 glasses and a pitcher to start. This, we're going to call her Bridget. Yep. You have talked with her before. You also know that she is actually the owner of this establishment, which, while not necessarily unusual for this region for a woman to own an establishment, it definitely stands out. There's not very many of them out there. She's wearing a blue dress with a brown long apron to kind of cover most of it in a almost rough kind of fabric. Her brown apron has smears of all sorts of things, from flour to grease to beer stains all over it, as it seems she's had quite the long day already, and it's still not even, like, the busy time. She has braided hair pulled back and a kind-looking face that you can see through her age. She's older, roughly, probably around Ursa's age.
I smile at her. Hi, Bridget.
It's good to see you two around. Folk. As she lays basically their biggest picture that she could find. What brings you back to town?
Well, we ran out of things to do. And the last place we were hanging out at, and we decided to come see if you need any help.
Well, she kind of sits there for a moment and thinks about it.
And when she's doing that, I take into account her appearance and how she looks tired and stressed and what have you. And I smirk and say, I have to say, this place is looking busier than ever. Looks like you're keeping busy.
While Ursa and Bridget are talking, Ursa will have poured a measure from the pitcher into the 2 glasses and then start drinking directly from the pitcher.
She kind of, you say that and it kind of snaps her out of what she was thinking real quick. And she's like, yes, we're getting many more caravans through this region recently. On that, are you hungry?
Very starved. I would love a bowl of your legendary stew. And maybe a loaf of bread and some cheese.
See what I can round up for you.
I appreciate it.
Stew.
She turns briskly around and starts to go with your request.
Yeah.
As many more tables are like, more beer! And general rowdiness has kind of reestablished itself in the establishment.
Fair enough.
Is she the only one working, or does she have other people here as well?
Yes, there's other younger women kind of going back and forth. One of the tables that screamed more beer, shortly within the next minute, a young woman comes through and places down another pitcher at that table. And we'll say this is one of the mercenary tables that she does this at. One of the guys, slaps her ass as she's just spilling some beer, as she obviously looks very startled and uncomfortable by that, but doesn't say anything and places it down, hurriedly walking away.
Yeah, that's about right for an alehouse. It's nice to relax in a not raining environment.
The rain isn't so bad. I'm just glad we don't leave the north.
Kind of makes me wish we would just settle down somewhere.
It's boring.
There are many stories throughout legend of bringing dangers to you if you happen to have a sophisticated cathedral and adequate reason for people to come seek you out and keep things entertaining. For example, if one such as you were to create a giant castle, I'm sure the realm would not overlook any expense with which to root you out.
Yeah, but that's just a bunch of these swords. It's not any fun fighting them anymore.
Not individually.
Even in groups, they break too.
One of the tables, one of the beds stand up and go, yes! As they seem to, as he starts pulling in some of the cash that he's won from his dice game. Shortly thereafter, Bridget comes back with a bowl for him, almost a small cauldron for you of stew. She ladles some of it out into the bowl for you, passing it, and just leaves the ladle in there for you.
At this point, if Bridget doesn't already know, she should know that with this level of service, this is now a protected establishment. And Ursa likes her.
I pull out from my jacket a half dinar and put it on the table and slide it to her.
She very discreetly and it seems to just disappear in her hand as she kind of gives you a wink, turns around, and gets the rest of what you requested. The other women that seem to be working there don't service you, though, specifically. She seems to be hands-on, dealing with you only. So if you ever have any requests, that is who you flag down.
Right. It also solves the issue of not having to describe other people. Although you did describe the one brother.
I mean, it also kind of makes sense, considering that, the two of us, for varying reasons, don't look super friendly.
Well, you doubly so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm friendly, I'm chatty, you're...
Yeah. Compared to me, you might as well be sitting there in a Barney suit.
Right, exactly. I'm the friendly neighborhood, whatever I am.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And he's the gruff old man.
Yeah.
So when the next time she comes back after I've eaten some of the delicious soup or stew, complete with potatoes and meats and carrots and other vegetables, she comes back and I thank her and I say, so have you put any thought into, is there anything that needs to be done around here?
She kind of sits there as she places a small platter of bread, steaming warm as if it just came out of the oven. And some of the cheese that you requested, as well as you don't know how she did it. Like, she brought another pitcher with all that stuff.
Practice. Practice is how she did it, I'm sure.
Well, I have heard some of the caravans traveling through mentioning more wild attacks, animals attacking caravans along the way. You would know that's a bit unusual.
I was going to say the same.
Because the path, it's fairly well traveled, so there's enough civilization on it that wildlife wouldn't necessarily come to it. Now, whether it just be the end of winter, start of spring, that's, like, maybe that makes some sense. But she wouldn't be mentioning it to you, knowing what you guys do, if it wouldn't be somewhat worth your time.
Or at least, at the very least, out of the ordinary, or a serious problem.
She sits there and she thinks for a moment, kind of going, oh, this is a season for fog sharks up near close to the White Sea. I don't know if you guys have fought those before, but I hear that they can be quite fearsome. It's not something that we generally deal with in this region, since we're too far away from water. Although we do get occasional mists and fog.
That sounds probably more up Ursa's alley.
Fog sharks.
I don't know if any wildlife would ever dare approach us. We do. One of my traveling companions is, of course, a bear, and bear eats lots of wildlife. But all the same, thank you. We'll look into it.
If you're really curious if there's anything particularly bothering the town, you can see if you can talk to Carl or one of his stewards. They might be offering something.
No reward is necessary. But we'll talk to him if we come aboard.
Already there, Atlas.
Are you saying you would like to go check out the fog sharks to the north now? I just got dry.
Either that or we talk to this Carl guy.
Suppose we could
Might be something closer by we can fight.
I suppose we could go talk to him and see what he needs, and spend the night and set off in the morning. Maybe it'll be less rainy.
Yeah, works for me. You're the one who bitches about getting wet.
You know that it won't be less rainy in the morning.
It's harder to read a good book when you're outside.
Yeah, I forgot you do that reading stuff. Alright. We'll stay the night here.
Okay. Let's go talk to the Carl. So we'll get up, and I've already paid for stuff. We'll walk out.
Before you do, we'll say you guys actually finish more of your meal.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I meant
we want to finish the meal
Okay.
first.
Once she comes by to clear the items, she will kind of lean in and whisper and let you know discreetly, like, try not to be obvious about she's whispering something to you, but she does mention that one of the caravans came in employment under one of the dynast's families. And then she just kind of she mentions that, kind of pulling up all the boards, and then just walks away, not even...
I'd wink at her as she is finishing up, but besides that, no comment, no mention.
Now, that being said, she doesn't really know what you guys are.
Right.
But she knows that you're not necessarily human based off of what you guys go and fight and have bragged about in her establishment in the past.
As far as anybody needs to be concerned, we're lost eggs too.
She likes you well enough to at least give you the heads up.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's go talk to the Carl.
Alright.
It is still pouring down rain as you make your way up the slight incline to the Carl's longhouse. And this one is a bit more ornate than the other longhouses, as it belongs to the lord of the region. Longhouses here have had some decor to them. They've been pretty simplistic. Mm-hmm. It's pretty obvious that the ornate carvings into the wooden structures were commissioned by fairly good artists. While most of the wood for the building itself, or the materials just in general, is still going to come from the region, and you can't tell whether or not it's the best quality.
Sure. But you said it's ornate, so it's
it has carvings in more areas than any of the other places.
So
once you get halfway up to this longhouse, it stops being a dirt road, and they've actually used boards in between to make not a makeshift road, but the road going up to the longhouse to protect visitors from getting too much mud on their shoes and that sort of thing, as well as providing some stability for walking.
Okay, so get on the board as soon as we have the option.
I'm going to say that you guys have probably talked to, not the Carl himself per se,
but at least one of his people.
Yeah, but at least one of his people, as you guys have done monster hunting in this region before. There's going to be someone here who knows more specifics.
I think Yarok can hold his liquor pretty well. I should go say hi to him. Don't play him in a game of chance, he cheats.
I'll keep that in mind.
It's going to be a series of longhouses, with the largest one being more the residence for the Carl, as well as the meeting hall. That one is connected to a couple of smaller longhouses, so it's more of a small complex here. Mm-hmm. And the one that you named him Yarvik?
I named one of them Yarvik.
You want to go talk to Yarvik? Okay.
Well, I know him because he likes to hang out at the tavern, and he might not have made it down there yet, but he's who I've talked to before.
Okay. And so you are able to go to one of the smaller ones that has office, and there is Yarvik. He's a very thin and tiny man compared to you. He's balding, gray hair, looks to be perpetually tired, but does wear fairly nice clothing compared to all the other village people that you've seen.
Hello, Yarvik. It's good to see you again, my friend.
You come in, he's fussing around with some papers, you say that, and he looks up at you and goes, you could just see that, oh crap, look in his face.
Something wrong, my friend?
Slowly looks to Ursa, back to you. No. And then his demeanor kind of quickly shifts and goes, so what brings you back to our humble establishment?
Bridget's stew and some of her mead and bread I had tonight was delicious. Nice warm place to stay. I was wondering if while we were here we could be of any use.
He sits there and he thinks for a moment. You can almost imagine him thinking about the last time he said there wasn't any work for you guys. You could just almost see that in his eyes, and he looks back to Ursa.
Ursa gives him a big, toothy smile.
Raises an eyebrow and then starts looking through the papers as he's trying to find something.
So Bridget mentioned that there might be some wildlife attacks in the region, and it's come to my attention that there is some seafood that could be acquired. Something about fog sharks being good eating. This far in from the coast, I'm sure you don't get a lot of good seafood.
No reports of fog sharks. And then he kind of, when you mentioned the wild animals, he kind of thinks for a moment, puts all the papers he had in his hands down, and goes to another desk, and starts mumbling about how his clerks never file anything correctly, and then pulls out a small paper with terrible chicken scratch on it. The writing seems to be more of the rune type, which I imagine what Sky Tongue tends to be more associated with. And he's like, well, I have heard rumors of a large beast, wolf-like creature attacking one of the farms in the area. To be honest, I largely wrote it off as he hands you the piece of paper with a quick description of the creature. I've mostly written it off because it seems too preposterous for this area.
As Ursa exists in front of him.
He meant it more as, obviously the person was exaggerating.
Right.
Yeah. But The wording of that just struck me as hilarious, because he's like, it seems too preposterous for this area. He, talking to the person accompanying the 8-foot-tall armored individual.
I know, right?
Just a thought. Maybe put up a bulletin board outside and nail these to it, so we can just look at this and we don't have to bother you. Might be efficient from a time standpoint. I'm sure other adventurers come through on occasion.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yarvik, it's been a pleasure. I hope we don't find anything.
So you guys literally turn around and leave.
Yeah, I take the paper. Let's see who made the report.
There's no name ascribed to it.
There's a location? One of the outlying farms is what I was told.
Yeah. It's going to be more in the mountainous region. Actually, pretty close to one of the shrines.
Okay.
That people make
pilgrimages
to. Let's see, so it'll take you guys about 8 hours to get there via Agata. Whereas it takes everybody else
about 2 weeks. Wow, this is a remote region.
Well, luckily we got things that fly. Get from point A to point B a lot quicker.
Yep, you can set off in the morning.
The paper, you read the paper quickly, and it's a very brief description of a giant mangly wolf-type creature with a patchy pelt and a giant maw that seems to be attacking in a group.
Can I think of any monsters that might fit this description?
Lore roll? So intelligence plus lore. Well, it is possible that it could just be a large wolf.
Somebody exaggerating, right?
Someone exaggerating. It's also pretty possible that it's something known as a Great Terror. Now, this person mentioned that it was a pack. You're not sure if it's necessarily one Great Terror with a pack of regular wolves, because there's no description.
Or a pack of Great Terrors.
Or a pack of Great Terrors.
Well, it could be a Great Terror, which is a large wolf-like thing.
Here's the description of the creature. These gigantic hairy canine creatures grow 10 to 12 feet and about 16 feet long. A terror's monstrous fang-filled jaws can easily crush a man's skull. Great terrors have jaggedly striped brown or black pelts matted into a crest on their back. They have roughened paws that enable them to lope over icy, slippery ice, and in the dark, their eyes catch any light with a fiery orange glow.
This sounds like a fun time.
I have an idea for what to do with its corpse afterward, too. Alright, well, let's go to sleep and back at the inn and go hunting in the morning. Maybe we'll find some sign.
Alright.
So go back to the tavern.
Next time on Games of Divinity, a Northern Chronicle.
Going to a Catholic church and saying, hey kids, have you heard about Buddha? Or, basically just explaining, have you heard the Gospel of Bob?
Gotcha.
Probably confusion and a little bit of interest as opposed to outright offense.
Hold on, guys. I gotta take a piss. I'll be right back.
You made a character entirely for flavor reasons?
What is this shit?
Are you dying?
I think I see the alpha.
He's mine.
Only if he doesn't choke on me first.